In this video, we're talking about the 4 patterns crucial to breaking free of anxiety. And what we're really talking about is an idea called meta programs. Now, you may have heard of meta programs before, they may be completely new to you. But a meta program is an unconscious evaluation filter. So it's something that happens outside of your normal awareness, and it's about how you decide what you pay attention to, and just as importantly, what you don't pay attention to. So these meta programs are unconscious evaluation filters about where you put your focus and where you put your energy and attention. So when we think about these meta programs, if they continue to happen at an unconscious level, we're often at the mercy of the programs that we picked up during childhood or the programs that we're following the rules by in the situation that we're in, but we very rarely get to consciously make a choice and to do something different. Now, there are over 40 meta programs in total, but there are 4 really important ones when it comes to anxiety. So when these 4 patterns combine, you create a situation where anxiety starts to build, and simultaneously you create a situation where you get stuck in it. So what ends up happening is you fall into this place where you start to feel anxious, and then it just spins and spins and spins, so it continues to build and accumulate. So knowing these 4 patterns is really, really important because first of all, we can start to make a change in terms of how we are labeling our experience. And this has a really profound effect on the way our brain perceives what's happening. So we'll talk through the meta programs and then I'll come back to that idea at the end. So there are 4 in particular that we're looking for. Now the first one is called away from. Now when you're doing an away from pattern, you'll be thinking about problems, obstacles, and things you want to avoid. Okay, so the trademark of a away from pattern is focusing on problems, obstacles, and what you want to avoid. Now, the body language of the away from pattern is slumped, head down, chin down, and lots of. So that's an away from at the extreme. So our body language is sunken, it's sitting back, it's head and chin down, and it's thinking and talking about problems, obstacles, and what you want to avoid. Now, paired with that is our second pattern or a second meta program called options. Now, when you're doing an options pattern, you're thinking about different possibilities. You're thinking about alternatives, essentially different options. So when we pair these 2 patterns together, if you're focused on the problems, the obstacles, and what you want to avoid, and then you're thinking about all the different ways that these problems could happen, you can see how anxiety starts to build. So when we think about catastrophizing, if we're focusing on problems and then we're thinking about all the different things that could go wrong and all the different negative consequences, now we've combined away from and options. Our third meta program is called reactive. So a reactive meta program is when you're inside your own head. So you're not sort of verbalizing, you're not speaking to other people, you're inside your head and you're thinking. You're chewing things over, you're considering, you're analyzing. And when we combine that with our first 2, we start to get almost a perfect storm. So we've got focusing on problems, thinking about what you want to avoid and things that are going to go wrong. You've got the options pattern, that then thinking about how these various problems could come up in different guises. So you're catastrophizing about all the different ways it could happen. And then you're staying inside your head, so you're just sort of chewing it over and over and over again. The fourth pattern that creates this deadly foursome is a pattern called internal. Now, when you're doing an internal, it means you're referencing your own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs to make a decision. So rather than going outside of you, speaking to someone else, speaking to a family member, speaking to a colleague, just doing something that involves someone else, you're referencing only your own thoughts and feelings in order to get conclusions, make decisions. So now we do have our perfect storm because you're focusing on problems. You're thinking about all the various ways these problems could happen. You're staying inside your head and thinking about them, and you're referencing how you're feeling, and based on the first three, not very well, to make decisions about how things are going to go. So these four patterns combine to create anxiety and to get you stuck in it. So, just as with our mental imagery, our first step is to start noticing and labeling the patterns. Because rather than you saying, oh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I'm feeling anxious, we want to start to do, okay, well, what pattern are you doing? I'm doing a really strong away from. I haven't spoken to anyone for the last hour. I'm doing a reactive. I'm only deciding on what's happening in my body. I'm really focused on the sensations I'm having. I'm doing an internal. And I'm thinking about, oh, I've just thought about 3 different scenarios how it could go wrong. I'm doing an options pattern. So you move to a position of observer, which detaches you from the emotion. You change the way you label your experience to give it a different way of thinking about it, which again diminishes the feelings. And it gives you the springboard to change. So when you're feeling anxious, you're doing these 4 patterns. So then, okay, if you're doing an away from, so you're focusing on problems, we want to go to the other end of the spectrum, so a different meta program called towards, which is where your focus is on what you want to get, what you want to gain, and what you want to have. So as an example, when you're doing an away from, I really don't want to go to this team building event because I think it's, I'm going to feel anxious on the day. To a towards, right, I want to get through the day feeling calm. I want to have a sense of achievement from actually keeping calm. I want to gain a greater sense of confidence by actually feeling and doing the courage and doing it anyway. So we move our attention from the away from, which will get you stuck, to the towards, get, gain, have, which shifts your mindset and shifts the mental imagery. Reactive is when you're inside your head. So the best way to do that is go opposite and become proactive. So take action to doing something. This could be a brisk walk, it could be some admin that you need to do, it could be cleaning the house, it could be a phone call, an email, but you're doing some action. Rather than being inside your head, you're doing something with the body, and when you're moving the body, motion is lotion, and that starts to change the way that you feel. When you're doing an options pattern, so you're thinking about all the different combinations, all the different scenarios, we want to get you to create a step-by-step plan for what you're going to do. So effectively, we move you from options and we move you towards a process. And when you have a process, that gives you security, gives you a sense of knowing where you are, knowing where you're going, and that calms the nervous system down. So if you're now all of a sudden focusing on what you're going to get, gain, and have, in addition to that, you're also giving yourself a step-by-step process, and you're proactively doing it, or you're proactively taking steps to do something different, all of a sudden things start to change quite quickly. And then we add our final component. Rather than doing an internal, so referencing only your thoughts and feelings, you can go external, so the opposite meta program, and that's to reach out and speak to someone. It doesn't even have to be what you're feeling anxious about, but you can just speak to someone, get some outside input. It could be listening to an audio, listening to a podcast, watching the TV, anything that actually gets you out of this internal and gets you to externally engage with the outside. Hopefully, in an ideal world, you'll be communicating. So if it's two-sided, you're having a chat, you're having a call, that's best. But any of the other variations will help you get a little bit of a shift. Okay, so if we summarize, the 4 patterns that get you stuck in anxiety away from, focusing on problems. Okay, options, thinking about all the different possibilities of how it could go wrong. Reactive, staying inside your head, and internal, focusing on your bodily sensations. When we notice them, we become an observer, and our options to change this around are to use any of the following four. So, focus on what you want to get, gain, and have. So, move into a towards pattern. Give yourself a process, a step-by-step plan of what you're going to be doing next. Proactively take action to do something else. So, get your body moving to do something, and become external by speaking to someone on the outside. You'll start to notice that sometimes you might not do all of the four patterns, sometimes you might be doing just one of them, sometimes you might do 2, 3, and then sometimes if you're feeling stuck, it's very likely you're doing all 4. But now you can observe it with that same curiosity as we did in the last video. We become a curious observer. We label the experience through the patterns rather than the emotions, which again takes a layer off it. And then we use one of our 4 breakout patterns to change the way that you think. So these meta-programs are really, really powerful in changing how you think and feel, becoming more conscious, becoming more aware, and actually feeling calmer and more in control. Okay.